Usopp is about to get a huge upgrade on Elbaf and become a brave warrior of the sea. But question, what even is that? Usopp's dream is a very interesting one because it doesn't have a set condition for completion. Like for Zoro to become the world's greatest swordsman, he has to beat Mihawk. And for Nami to draw a map of the world, then she needs to do the thing it is I just said. Brook reuniting with Laboon, Frankie sailing around the world on his ship, etc. all have quantifiable endpoints. But Usopp's dream is very subjective. And given everything he's accomplished in One Piece so far, you could even make the argument that he's already achieved his dream. I mean, yes, he's still scared of almost everything that happens, but you can't be courageous without also feeling fear. Usopp has shown incredible courage and bravery throughout the series, and with characters like your Luffy's, your Zoro's, and your Sanjai's, they don't feel fear, because they have the power to back up almost anything they want to do. So in a way, Usopp's dream is even more difficult than any of theirs, because he has to get on their level without their power. And there's one big problem with Usopp's dream as he initially sets out to sea, which is that he doesn't know what a brave warrior is. He's never sailed the Grand Line, he knows his father is a great pirate, but he doesn't know what his father's capable of. Really, he doesn't know what any of the words he's saying mean. It would be like if Zoro said he wanted to become the world's greatest swordsman and then had to ask what a sword is, then had to spend the entire series learning how to use one. That's not an insult to Usopp at all. I'm just saying that he had to start this series from absolute zero. And he's had to work ridiculously hard to even define what his dream is, much less achieve it. And it's not just him either. No one really knows what Usopp's dream means. When Usopp tells Broggy, of all people, that he wants to become a brave warrior of the sea, Broggy's response is, "What's that?" And to bring the Zoro analogy back into things, this is like Zoro telling Mihawk that he wants to become the world's greatest swordsman, and Mihawk replying with, "Cool, what's that?" And Zoro's just like, "It's you, you prick." But this is what I love so much about Usopp's story. It comes with such a strong attachment to reality, because how many of you wanted to be something as a child that you didn't even realize what that thing was? I know it's very vague, but you probably get it. Or wanted to be something that you came to redefine later as an adult. In Usopp's case, his dream isn't defined until Little Garden, because something happens on this here Little Garden that had not happened up until this point in One Piece, which is that Usopp was in close proximity to overwhelming power, and he did not get scared. As Dory and Broggy dueled like the colossal titans they are, Usopp just stood there, staring in complete and utter awe. But it wasn't just because of the display of power. On a deeper level, Usopp understood why they were fighting, which is ironic because neither Dory nor Broggy could even remember the reason why they were fighting. But that was unimportant. It's like each one of them has a flag on his chest that says warrior, and those flags mean more to them than their very lives. They refuse to let them be torn off. That's why they've been fighting for 100 years, to protect their flags. Don't you get it? This is a glorious battle to the death between true warriors. And it's only here that Usopp realizes what his dream actually is, which I think Nami makes very clear when she misinterprets Usopp's dream. She assumes that Usopp wants to become a giant so that he can fight like Dory and Broggy. In fact, Broggy also assumes this as well, when Usopp says that he wants to become just like them. And that completely misses the point. Usopp has no desire to become a giant. I mean, he probably has wild fantasies about becoming a giant and being able to fight like them, but he's too grounded in reality to ever believe that. What he wants to do is become a man who can live and die with this warrior philosophy. Weirdly, if Usopp wanted to literally become a giant, then that would be a lot easier to accomplish. San Juan Wolf's Devil Fruit grants that exact power, but Usopp could become the largest creature on the planet, but it doesn't matter. It's still not going to achieve his dream. And we can even quantify it to treasure. After Broggy makes a speech about honor being his treasure in the eternal afterlife, Usopp very much takes that on board and decides that honor will become his treasure as well. It's all mental, because if Dory and Broggy were regular humans, then that wouldn't change anything. They would still be fighting each other to the death to protect their flags. Becoming a warrior is not racially exclusive. It just so happens to be much more encouraged within Elbafian culture. And we get a glimpse of this when Broggy thinks he's won. He counts 467 battles and 1 victory. And that one victory means everything to him. Most people would have a more pessimistic outlook on life, focusing on the amount of battles that they were unable to win. And that's very much Usopp in One Piece. He has a lot, and I mean a lot of low moments, a lot of losses, a lot of being scared. But in the end, all he's looking for is that one moment to define him, that one win. In the end, Dory and Broggy inspired Usopp's second dream of going to Elbaf. It gets no second dream, it's more of like a supplementary dream to the first dream. It gave Usopp a path forward. Usopp knows that the next step towards his dream is to visit the Holy Land of Warriors, to fully immerse himself in the culture and emerge as the brave warriorman that he wants to become. Usopp also ends up being the key savior during the Little Garden arc, which starts off a motif of his involvement in giant-focused stories. But I very much consider Little Garden to be Usopp's flashback playing out in real time. Most Straw Hats define their dreams in flashbacks, and this was the moment that truly set the course for his life. Good stuff, Usopp, but what next? Well, during Enies Lobby, Usopp was at his lowest point yet, having left the crew and also running away from himself by pretending to be Sogeking. In fact, while he's invading Enies Lobby, he even thinks to himself whether or not he should just completely run away. It really is peak coward Usopp. And not like comical cowardice either, but like the really soul-destroying kind. And it's completely antithetical to becoming a brave warrior of the sea. And what really saves him in this moment is an encounter with the recently defeated Oimo and Kashi. And it's an even bigger moment than you may remember, because Usopp even removes his mask to talk to them, face to face, warrior to warrior, because no warrior would ever hide behind a mask. You bear your face proudly no matter how phallic the nose is. In fact, the more phallic, the better. And after informing them about Dory and Broggy, Oimo and Kashi invite Usopp to wreak havoc with them. So on this occasion, not only does Usopp get to witness an honorable battle, but he's now taking part in it. A big step forward. And yeah, there's a bit of fun irony that the Straw Hat the Giants get along with the most is the one who is the least warrior-like and the most cowardly, at least from our perspective as readers. But the Giants understand something about Usopp that we don't often get to see, because he's mainly used for gags. But it's because Usopp understands their pain. And even if he's completely incapable of performing it right now, he treasures their philosophy. Oimo and Kashi also show great levels of respect to Usopp because they refer to him by his warrior name, Sniper King. And after Enies Lobby, Oimo and Kashi even offer to take Usopp to Elbaf. That is a very rare honor to grant a non-giant. Elbaf is a purposely isolated nation, and pretty much every time they've opened their borders to select non-giants, it's resulted in disaster. And again, here you could make the argument that he's become a brave warrior of the sea. He's earned the respect of multiple Elbaf warriors, participated in multiple glorious battles, and received his official invite to Warland. To everyone looking in on the outside, he's a pretty damn brave warrior. But to Usopp, he isn't even close to believing that about himself. Him going to Elbaf right now would be pointless, because it would be him running away from his problems. He would have no right to be in the land of warriors after having done that. And so Usopp had to apologize and win back his honor, and then go on to earn even setting a single foot on Elbaf. And from this point on, he redoubled his efforts. Our next major moment comes on Dressrosa. Here Usopp gets to live out a shell of his dream, and he becomes the accidental leader of the Tontatta tribe, which is really cool because to them, he's a giant. They see him the same way that Usopp sees Dory, Broggy, Oimo, and Kashi. Big. And that's not lost on Usopp, which is why standing up to Sugar and Treble is an integral turning point for him. With no hope of victory, he stands up to them. This is Usopp practicing what he saw in Little Garden. Instead of running away in shame but preserving his life, Usopp was willing to die with that warrior flag planted on his chest. And it also really shouldn't be lost on anyone that Harudin, a giant from Elbaf, is the very first person to recognize Usopp's actions. Usopp is no giant. In fact, he's even small by human standards. But on this particular occasion, he embodied the spirit of a warrior, and the warrior god saw fit to grant him victory as a reward. It's at this point that Usopp has stopped pretending. And as annoying as it was to see him running away at the end of that chapter with Treble, like genuinely, I remember reading it weekly and people were furious. They were like, it's been over 700 chapters and he's still running away like a coward? Have we done nothing in this time? But it really was necessary to show Usopp's peak fear and then overcome it. If he wasn't scared at all, then that takes a lot away from his journey, because it's about overcoming fear, not eradicating it. And after seeing that, I thought that Usopp was more than ready to visit Elbaf. Which of course brings us to the best part. A lot of people suspect that Elbaf is going to be a big level up arc for Usopp, but they're thinking in terms of strength. Usopp will arrive in Warland and get to train with all of the giantses, and then become stupidly powerful for the final arc. And this isn't a new thought. People have been saying this for as long as I can remember, with rampant speculation like, say, this Reddit thread. To all the Usopp stans, do you honestly see Usopp getting a training arc in Elbaf that makes him YC1 plus question mark? And in case you don't know, YC plus 1 means Yonko Commander 1 and above, a made-up tier of power that the fanbase uses to refer to characters like King and Katakuri, the sort of right-hand figures of emperors. But there is no world where that ever happens. Usopp is never going to become a physical powerhouse. And we know this because of Eiichiro Oda's statement about Usopp in One Piece 10th Treasure Treasures, a special magazine thing released in 2007. I hope that Usopp will continue to be the weakest Straw Hat member, no matter who joins the crew in the future. Usopp will always be the weakest, and that's exactly how it should be, because his dream loses so much without that handicap. It's not about acquiring strength that never has been. It's about what he saw on Little Garden. Usopp needs to plant a flag on his chest that says warrior, and regardless of whether he wins or loses, he needs to be willing to do whatever it takes to protect that flag, even if that means a glorious battle to the death. He needs to be put in a situation where the odds are even more overwhelmingly against him than usual, and then use that to become a brave warrior. And what I think we need in this story to bring Usopp full circle is for him to be contrasted against a giant. For Usopp to demonstrate the attitude of a warrior against a giant who completely spits in the face of that philosophy. Perhaps even Prince Loki himself. We know almost nothing about the upper class of Elbaf society. We only know about the warriors who live at the base of the extremely large Yggdrasil-esque tree, and it could be that the upper class of giants don't quite share the basic lust for battle that the masses do. In Norse mythology, Loki himself is of course a trickster god, often considered very clever but very embarrassing, and if Oda retains that characterization, then he really is a perfect contrast to Usopp. Usopp himself is a very tricky and often embarrassing man, but he is always striving to change that. So we could have a human with the attitude of a warrior but lacking the strength, versus a giant with the strength but lacking the attitude of a warrior, and in fact may possess the attitude of a filthy, scheming human man. Maybe Usopp could even have his own David and Goliath moment by actually defeating a giant. Not by fighting harder or dealing insane levels of damage, but by standing his ground, being clever, and then sprinkle a little bit of fate into the battle soup, and delicious. And then there's the giant army. The Elbaf warriors are known as the single strongest fighting force in the world, or at least they were at some point in the past. Their current status is unclear, but there's a very good reason why the world government doesn't want to mess with them. Big Mom has even said that with this army, she would be able to take on all three of the other emperors with no issues. So who's going to lead this army into glorious fight battling? Well, we know who it's not going to be. It's not going to be Luffy. He has no desire to lead anything except his own crew, and even then, he's not very good at it. But you throw anyone else into the mix and that cramps his style. However, Usopp is the clear natural leader. Not to your average person, but he's the one who the giants recognize. The one that the giants have always recognized as being worthy of them. Whether that's Dory and Broggy on Little Garden, Oimo and Kashi on Enies Lobby, or Harudin on Dressrosa. Usopp very naturally falls into positions of leadership and respect with the giants. And if there's anything that would truly cement his name in history, it would be commanding an army of giants. The Grand Fleet currently has 5,640 members, and for Usopp's lie about having an army of 8,000 followers to come true, then we're going to need a bit more than that. Perhaps say an army of 2,500 giants? Yes, I think that would do quite nicely. I also think it would be cool if Usopp learned or even developed his own Elbaf technique. Like how Harudin and Big Mom both use the Spear of Elbaf, or how Big Mom and Kaido came up with their own incarnation of Dory and Broggy's Hakoku sovereignty. Maybe not something that's traditionally warrior-esque in the way of blunt force and such, but something that Usopp could develop which works for his own individual style of warriorhood. One of Usopp's attacks might even be dubbed the X of Elbaf by the onlooking giants, because in the end the spirit of Elbaf, it has nothing to do with being a giant. If Usopp can embody their philosophy, then that's enough for them. They'll go, mate, what you did just then, that was pretty Elbaf of you. And perhaps Usopp will even be rewarded with his very own specially crafted weapon, which does go against his sniper nature, but Usopp is also a well-established user of hammers, so I'm thinking he could have his very own Mjolnir, something to pull out during his next battle. And then the enemy assumes it's a fake because, we've done the hammer thing twice before, and then bam, it's real because Usopp is done lying. It's all hard truths from here on out. Hard truths to be smashed all over your soft, fragile skull brains. I also think it would be great if there was a Mjolnir or something like it on Elbaf, something that no giant can pick up because in their minds they aren't worthy. But then Usopp figures out some sort of trick to wield it and he becomes their leader that way. But Elbaf isn't the end. Even after that, we've still got to head to Laugh Tale and make Luffy the Pirate King, which is probably where Usopp's final step will be. After being recognized by the giants of Elbaf, there is no longer any turning back. Usopp needs to face this final challenge head on. And this leads to the Usopp death theory, which stems from this quote. Even if someday I lose everything and face death alone on a deserted island, I'll die proud of the way I lived, and I'll say, I am Usopp, brave warrior of the sea. So some people argue that the only way for Usopp to achieve his dream is to die. And it's actually a weirdly popular thing to see. Of all of the Straw Hats, so many people think that Usopp is the most likely one to die, as in there's no way to quantify what he wants in life, and instead he needs to make that proud leap towards death. And I can definitely see him doing that, just without the actual death part. I can see him staring down certain doom and making the decision to die as a proud warrior. Then, at the very last second, the battle is interrupted by Dory or Broggy or another giant who says, "Well said, Sniper King," and then a legion of giants appear to fight alongside him. And then by the time Usopp actually meets Usopp, he's going to be a completely different person to even the Usopp we know now. Usopp's gonna see his son for the very first time in a long time, and he'll go, "Damn, kid. I mean, man, you're one brave warrior of the sea. But you know what? You'd be even braver if you press the subscribe button for this channel. Don't be a coward now, Usopp. Join the Grand Fleet today, and if you enjoyed this video, then you're gonna love this next one as well."